All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. This is early. I'm going to be out of here very soon. But first, I want to read from Psalms 140. I'm looking at verses 4 and verses 5. It says, "Keep me, O Lord, from the hands of the wicked. Preserve me from the violent man, who has proposed to overthrow my goings. The proud have laid a snare for me in cords. They have spread a net by the wayside. They have set grins for me." Pause. This scripture is speaking primarily about two things. The first one is seeing himself have to fight against his own tendencies. And the second one is where people are smiling at you, but behind your back, they're looking to stab you. So in this life, this is the kind of situation you have to deal with. Not only do you have to deal with enemies without, but you also have to deal with enemies within. I want to say to you guys that you can overcome. David spoke to something that was greater than himself. We all have ideals, and there are things that we have to speak to that are greater than ourselves. And in Psalms 140, he spreads out his case before the Lord. Now, you may ask yourself, who is the Lord, or what is goodness and what is good? I'll tell you this. Put it this way. For those of you who are not Christian mindset or religious mindset, appealing to God is appealing to goodness. Tapping into that nature, appealing to it, seeking after it, it gives you a certain mindset. And so once you seek after goodness, even when you see injustices happening to you and to other people, you seek even further and appeal after it. A prayer is simply a request. And so if I say I pray to God, it's really I am seeking after God. I am requesting the virtues of God. And so for those of you who, for instance, are not particularly religious minded, I can speak it in a language that you would understand. You are appealing to a higher self or a higher nature, something better, an ideal to strive towards. This is what you're actually doing. And so by striving towards that ideal and focusing on it, you're able to overcome even the lower things that people may do to you. So this is the way of me explaining that. If I would explain it to someone who doesn't necessarily believe that God exists, even though they believe good exists. All right. So now that we have said that, I want to speak to you guys about the DCEU, Justice League and Realism. Justice League is a little bit different to the other of Zack Snyder's trilogy, the other two movies, in that Justice League was directed by Zack Snyder, but also assisted by another person came in when Zack could not continue to direct, and that was Joss Whedon. So it's a combination of two different directorial styles. On top of that, what is interesting about Justice League is that in that vacuum where Zack was not there, everyone had to sort of try and do their best. So what's happening is, in the absence of Zack Snyder, we found that we had a number of different players. It wasn't just Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon was hired to sort of rewire a script and do a couple reshoots. But it, of course, his job ended up being one in which he was answering to whom concerning this. And he would have to bring it to a committee, a board. And so they would have a certain amount of sway as to what would stay in the film and what wouldn't. And so because Whedon kind of jumped in last minute, and Snyder was really the one doing the dialogues between them, in a way, Whedon ends up not even being a director on this project, but just someone who is sort of trying to satisfy everyone, trying to satisfy the demands that Zack had, trying to get his own ideas to the table, and also trying to satisfy what Warner Brothers, the committee, and Warner Brothers, the executive, was desiring for the film. So he ended up having to do these. It was very, very ticklish situation for him to be in. to really be honest with you, even though I was working with Zach. But the point behind it was to get the movie out. So they succeeded at getting Justice League out. We didn't have to wait forever. We actually got the film out. And I am very grateful and glad. And I thank Warner Brothers. I thank Zack Snyder. I thank Joss Whedon. I thank all the parties involved in getting this film out. However, this film is not without criticism. While I am more of a person who goes by story and plot, character development, etc., and so I can, and based on the fact that this movie, as was said, you know, had a change of directors at the last moment and had all these other complications that was going along with it, it just bears in mind that with that kind of thing happening, you would have a difference in how the movie would actually end up being. It just so happened that the movie, in my opinion, did not tremendously suffer from having change of director and so on. The basic story that was being that was storyboarded and that was supposed to be conveyed was conveyed in this movie. However, this is very important. However, in this movie, it is not to say that compared to the standards Zach had set at the beginning of the movie and set for this movie and what we have seen from trailers, that this movie lived up to that standard. No, it was subpar to that standard. All right. Why that's important is because Zach is a realist. He deals with realism. He's not a realist, sorry. His directorial style for the DCEU, that he has been doing so far has been based on realism, hyperrealism, and realism. Literally saying, this is our world, and I am here to bring these characters to our world. Now, I've been showing you the series on realism, and I'm about to show you why this movie is not as hyper-realistic or realistic as the other two DCEU films. And I will have some critiques. Some of them will be scathing, some of them will not. But it's important to discuss this because what a lot of people don't understand is I enjoy this film in spite of these things that I'm about to speak about. So what people have to understand is I pretty much sort of refined my perception of the film and took down my anticipation, because the sneak peek was a standard that had us all saying, oh my God, this is going to be the greatest movie of all time, right? The sneak peek did that. But after hearing after hearing Danny Elfman's score and watching it a couple snippets that they had of this movie and seeing the modifications, the little purple blobs and Batman jumping down the silo and stuff like that, it had me thinking, okay, are they tampering with this thing? Are they tampering with it too much? And I was very concerned. In fact, if you guys go back and watch one of my YouTube videos, I was like, I don't know if this thing is like Thor Ragnarok or if it's Thor Ragnarok or Spider-Man Homecoming quality as a hawk of shit, I'm going to be very disappointed, and I will tell you guys, don't go see it. And it so happened that I was pleasantly surprised. I was somewhat shocked, and I saw everybody knew about the mustache gate thing. I saw the mustache gate thing, and I let that go. And I was annoyed by the little kids' voices. But I was listening for the substance, and there was substance in the intro. You know, the substance built on hope and that kind of stuff. It was different. The ambience was different and everything. You could tell it's directorially different, but yet it fit in with the storyline. And so I just went with it. The Batman scene was awesome, and so on. So at the end of the day, and everybody knows, had me tearing up and stuff. But the point is, at the end of the day, it was not a Thor Ragnarok movie, and I was thankful for that. It was not a Spider-Man Homecoming movie. It wasn't that kind of caliber of movie at all. It was actually a movie with substance. It was a movie that was not a comedy. It was not a comedy, and I was thankful for that. The kind of idiosyncrasies that you tend to see in DCU movies, it followed that line. And it was not charming. It was not trying to be magical. It was trying to be still realistic and based in realism. And so I actually enjoyed it very much, so much that I went and saw it 10 times. Now, in terms, however, of realism, there were points where it was, yes, it was realistic. I mean, it was lit. It was realistic. Sometimes it was epic. The hyper-realism was fantastic. I bought it was in our world. Other times, The uncanny valley just messed me up. And I'm not talking about Henry Cavill's face. Henry Cavill's face is another story for another day. I'm talking about uncanny valley in terms of movement, in terms of how they decided to do color grading, in terms of how they decided to animate the characters that were CG, in terms of the detailing that they had. So in terms of those things, which Zack Snyder is an extremely detailed kind of guy. You've ever watched Owls of Ga'Hoole, the detail on those owls when they're flying and flight, the physics of their motion. It's almost like hyper-realism again, because it's like, it's animated, you know, it's an animated film, but it looks like real movement of a real owl. And he's very detailed in how he does these things. So he imitates life, and Zack Snyder is about imitating life. Now, 300 and, you know, Watchmen and Sucker Punch were not that. These DCEU movies were. And so, and the CG that they do makes it feel so real. And so it was a bit of a downer, I'll be honest with you, when I saw visually, and where I knew potentially these scenes could have been spectacular, and they were in the trailers, that they were dumbed down and numbed down. And we're going to talk about that. Leave your comments in the chat section. Leave your comments in the chat section. We're going to go into it. We're going to delve into it. And I've actually sent these criticisms to Warner Brothers and AT&T. I don't know if they'll pick it up, because a lot of people actually dialogue with them. But I sent these specific criticisms to them. I told them I appreciated the movie a lot. I appreciated what they did and everything. And then I started to very specifically hone in critiques with specific examples. I did this because just in case some wise ass decides to do this to Aquaman, which hopefully they don't tamper with James Wan movie. I don't know why these people feel that after seeing a movie so wonderful, and whatever the length is and whatever the director's given them best, they feel they need to modify it again. I don't understand that. Okay, shorten it, or, you know, can you shorten it, or can you change this, or it's just, you know, you don't want the kids to be spooked. I don't know what's wrong with these people, but they just have a disconnect between what these movies are supposed to be, what the fan base expects from them for having seen Man of Steel. I don't think they quite get it. And they're not consistent enough. I think the problem with these people is they're not consistent enough. They constantly feel they need to tweak and change something which doesn't need to be tweaked or changed. That's the problem. But anyway, let's continue. So that, again, this is criticism. This is criticism, and I have to criticize. Now, it's not going to affect anything, because Justice League is basically in home box office. It's doing its thing. I think the last time I checked was $47 million home box office. It's not bad. It's doing okay. It's doing better than I expected. I expected it only to hit 36 million. It did. It superseded that. So that's fine. If it gets to 50 million, maybe 60 million, fine. You know, it doesn't have to do any tremendous set of anything. But at the end of the day, what I'm about to say, my critiques, is not going to affect Justice League's run. It's not going to affect its home box office. These are things I can now say very freely about what I thought about the movie. Because there was so much negativity out there and vitriol, I did not do an assessment like this. But now I'm going to go into detail of why the realism in Justice League, particularly coming down to the end where it was supposed to be a pinnacle act with the fighting of the big baddie and everything, the pinnacle of Justice League, why that movie was not able to hit its all-time high facing Steppenwolf, and why it was more of a, you know, the tension and everything kind of let loose, and that final act was not that great. All right, so I'm going to go into the details of why that was so, and I will tell you also when in the movie this not tonal change, yes, okay, visual tonal change started to begin. And when I say visual tonal change, I'm talking in terms of realism. I'm not talking in terms of story. I'm not talking in terms of color palette, what people like to call color palette or color grading. It's really color grading. I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about in terms of many different factors. Specifically, I'm going to say the word details. This is something the MCU lacks that the DCU has, and that's what gives us the sense of realism. So, seeing that we had a former MCU director coming on the scene, I noticed he removed some of the details in his directing. I noticed that. And I also noticed as well that his approach to things when he could not explain it was to crack a joke. Okay. So I noticed those things very acutely. And I noticed that it was a sort of MCU style that he tried to incorporate into Justice League. Now, let me just be honest with you guys. There's nothing wrong with that per se. If you keep the tone of the movie, which was a serious tone, and it's not funny and there's not a whole bunch of jokes in there, but you take away from the edge, the epicness, and you also take away from the grand finale that we were looking for and that we would have been advertised for. Now, in and of itself, Justice League is just fine. It's a fine movie. It's great and stuff. But because of Zack Snyder's particular detail and his attention to detail and the fact that he is an artist at what he does, this showed up a lot. And so a lot of people were annoyed. A lot of people got outraged and they started throwing vitriol and they started bad talking the movie more than it really deserved. So I will go into detail of why, exactly why. I'm going to show you exactly why the realism sort of faded off and the tension and also the great climax was somewhat of more of a whimper than it was supposed to be a roar. Okay. All right. Let me just see what you guys are saying in the chat section before I move on. Okay. Nobody's saying anything in the chat section, and I don't even see anybody throwing in a like, but I know there are some other people watching this video as I speak. That's awesome. All right, people. So let me go to screen share and let me begin. All right. Okay. Oops. Oh, hold up. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Windows Media Player, and I'm going to show you from a playlist why the realism was not grasped, especially in the third act. I'm going to mostly be looking at examples from the third act. Now, there's some stuff earlier on in Heroes Park where I saw, again, a lacking of detail and a certain degree of poor physics, okay? Poor physics. And I'll explain exactly what I mean so that people will understand. And again, as a scientific mind, I could see these things and I identify them. You would see them, but not know how to identify them or to say what is actually going on. And so you can't articulate what's actually happening. I, though, can see it and I can articulate it. So let me show you, because it's only by showing you, you can understand what I'm saying. I say a lot of things, but usually most of that stuff goes over people's heads. And then I see Marvel fans trying to troll me, but they don't know what I'm specifically talking about. So you hear them talk generalities about the physics and that physics matters, but they don't know what that means. You know, it's so funny. I will show you what I'm talking about and the physics or something, and I'll show you the details of stuff. And this is why the DCEU is at another level to the MCU, okay? And we had an MCU director, and he pretty much validates what I'm saying. You'll see what I'm seeing. All right, so let's begin. Okay, that's not where I want to be, though. Oh, well, let's just look at, this is something that's, okay, let me start with this. All right, so the first thing, let's just talk about the first thing. The first thing you will notice here, even though this thing here is interrupting you so you can't see the full picture, the first thing you will notice is that in this picture, there is a difference in color, right? There's a difference in color. This one looks like it's nighttime. This one looks like it's day. You see all these little red things here as if it's lava or something. And here it looks kind of silverish all over. They probably didn't add in the stuff that they want to add in after. All right. You will also notice, if you're paying attention, this does not look metallic. This looks metallic, almost like a Kryptonian kind of metallic thing, right? This looks metallic and kind of dark metallic. And it feels sort of horrific, doesn't it? It gives you a creepy feeling inside. right? It's built out of a horror film almost, kind of alien and horrific kind of looking, right? This one, what does it remind you of? For those of you who know Play-Doh, it kind of reminds you of Play-Doh, doesn't it? Or plastic, or mud, or clay, doesn't it? It reminds you of mud or clay. This looks muddy, right? This looks metallic. This looks muddy. You will be surprised how much of a difference changing the color grading makes in how spectacular something may look, or how mundane and ordinary it may look. So they color graded this scene with red and brown, basically. Okay, everything red and brown. Okay. Because of that, it took away from the creepiness of the moment, of the anticipation of the climax of the moment, just that color grading. All right, I'm not talking about eliminating these two characters. That's a totally different story for another day. Just that. So what happens is, what we keep on seeing here, this doesn't even look like lava. You know, it would look like if this was like a volcano with lava. No, because the sky is also red. So that takes away and detracts from this red here. Now, if the sky countered this color, you would have had a much more volcanic look. But then you would have to have had literally little eruptions from here, little leakages of lava flowing on the ground to make me creep out. That was not there. So at the end of the day, this really looks like a slab of mud or clay with some glistening stuff like what do you call those things? Fireflies in it. It looks like fireflies in mud. That's not intimidating at all. So they took off the edge of the moment. This looks very intimidating, and the colors of the blue, the night sky, it's intimidating. You see? Not only that, but then the other thing that's really fantastic here is the details. You cannot see the details. So what I'll have to do is actually play this so you can see the details that I want to point out. It's only 4 seconds, and I'm already 2 seconds in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. I'm going to start. Now, oh, shit. No, I still, okay. Now, if you look below, okay, let me try and go back here. Let me try and go back. All right, good. Move out the way. If you look below, you'll notice that there is no, oh, God damn it, it's just 4 seconds. I'll have to freeze the stupid thing. All right, so let me try it one more time. Okay, I'm gonna have to pause it. Now, if you look in this space right here, which is blocked by this stupid volume knob, maybe I should just move the volume knob up. That's the problem with doing video. Anyway, here is clear. All of this here, there's some grading here, but you can't even see it, right? Damn it. But if you look here, you see a puddle of like moisture or liquid flowing out here. You see all these little extra pieces of liquid there. But the ground is wet. You can also see this metallic grating behind here that Aquaman is standing over. All right. And there's another one back there. The sky or the lighting is very sort of spooky, like if it's a moon out. It reminds you of a horror movie where there's like a werewolf or vampire somewhere, right? And then the blue hue, again, gives you that creepy feel. And then the metallic, sort of black, metallic, sort of vulcanized look sort of creeps you out. You're supposed to do that. Steppenwolf's a creepy guy. He's scary. And this is the big showdown. So this detail here is incredible, right? And it also, because of the color grading they use, it shows up the contours of almost everything, of all the rock, kind of whatever this thing is, kind of alien thing. It actually looks like, you know, you ever seen Alien? These kind of structures remind me of Alien, the movie. Very creepy, kind of cryptic, kind of as if a spore would just jump out of there, right? And that's the difference. Now, we got this in a trailer. I can't remember which one it was. But then they changed that look to this. So instead of having a wet surface, this surface doesn't look wet at all. It looks like a concrete surface. Not only that, but it actually looks like a concrete surface with some kind of like more dirt on the side of the concrete surface. And this end here just looks like dirt. Somebody dug out a wall through dirt. It doesn't look scary like this, cryptic. All right. There's no moon shining. There's no glistening. There's no shine. And the reason why the shine is important is because it gives a contrast, a creepy contrast to these people, and it integrates them into the setting. Now, this is a simplified setting in which they removed all of these other elements through their color grading. So even if there may have been a shadow or wetness or something like that, it's not going to show. Here, this looks wet. This does not. This looks dry. Okay. And everything seems one color, sort of monochromatic. Whereas here, your mind is an illusion, but your mind feels as if there's different shades of color, as if there's green here, sort of like, as if even though this is monochromatic, for some reason, because it's nighttime, you know there are other colors here. You know, you're reading through this. This is green. You know, your mind's interpreting these things. It can see a shade of blue here and so on, right? And this reflects the light, so it looks almost like there's some kind of fungus or something on it. Yes, but also it's reflecting light, so it's creepy. And this does not do that. So what they did was they moved from good color grading, which obviously Zack Snyder spent a lot of time doing, all right? And they just completely took the edge out of it, took the spectacularness out of it, took the creepiness out of it, and we just have Play-Doh. Okay? And that's the thing. It took the edge out of it. Now, some wise ass, maybe someone in, I don't know who, had the brilliant idea of changing the color grading so that it looked like this. Some wise ass. Okay? I also do believe that the sky turning red did not turn red the way how they had it in the movie. I also believe it turned red before the League fully came down there. Yes, but no, not before the League came. It started to do certain things before the League came. Yes, but this definitely is pitiful compared to this. All right. And I would suspect the League tried to ambush Steppenwolf, and it kind of backfired. Now, the point is that when you look at this as a still, both of these, you could tell the difference. I imagine seeing it play out in front of you. So we're going to move from the still here, and we're going to let it play out in front of us. You see the difference? All right, let's go back. Let's look at it one more time. All right. Now, let's look at it one more time. I just want to get the still first. Okay, so you can see it uninterrupted. Look at that. See the difference? Big difference, right? She says, shall we? All right, now when we talk about Aquaman riding the Batmobile, it was a really cool moment in the trailers. But when we see it in the movie, it's almost non-eventful. It's like, okay, right. Now, why is that so? The reason being, first of all, the camera angle. That's the first thing. This one's directly, so he drops directly in front of the camera. Gets your attention immediately. This one's a side angle, and it's a wider angle, okay? The second thing is how Zack Snyder treats the reality. Even though this was not completed, you can see the fire in the background is moving more like a natural fire that's burning. This explosion here is, if you see the explosions in Justice League from what we saw in the trailers, even when Batman throws the little bomb that blows up the parademon, totally different explosion effect to what we saw in the movie. In the movie, the explosion effect causes the parademon to just suddenly disappear. In the trailer, the explosion effect, actually you see the parademon moving back after the explosion effect because the parademon gets knocked off the ledge, obviously. So you can tell that the special effects suddenly changed after Zack Snyder left. And it's the same thing here. These explosions are very unrealistic. They're very unrealistic explosions, okay? This one blew up, and it's like, it almost looked like, you know, when a magician makes a rabbit disappear, he goes poof, and you see the smoke, poof. That's the kind of explosions we started getting. Cheap explosions. I don't know if they were strapped for cash or something. I just don't understand. But these explosions looked really, really awkward and threw us out of the reality. Not to mention all of these purple things, which I'm pretty sure, I'm damn near sure Zack Snyder did not have in his cut. Okay? And why do I know this? When we look at the Great War in the First Age, we didn't see those purple things. And the mother boxes were there. So I absolutely believe that that idea of putting these purple things out there was not an idea that they originally came out with. All right. Just had to close that window because my neighbors are talking. So all of that just to say, not only that, but the details in the ground. What's happening here on the ground? You'll see some stuff happen on the ground. Again, the details. Now, what I mean by the details on the physics is the ground looks very plain. Again, it has to do with their color palette that they chose. Because the sky is red, they decided everything had to be red. And that's even unrealistic, because even if the sky is red and you have red light, there are these slight changes in the spectrum when you're looking at certain objects. So they did a poor job of that as well. But here you will see, and this does look CG. It looks like this car is not even driving on this ground, and this ground is moving. And they did it umpteen times inside of Justice League at certain points, and mostly in the third act and fourth and fifth. You remember the final act where the Flash was running through a city and it looked fake as hell? I'll tell you why that happened too. It has to do with the difference. They tried to move. What they tried to do is move the background and have Flash running on a treadmill. And Zach really knows how to do that properly. And they never synced it up properly. So the Flash, while he's running, it just looks very, very weird. And he looked like he was wagging and he was running like a little girl. And all through the movie, he wasn't looking like that. And the reason is they didn't know how to sync up the movement of the background with Flash's movement, Ezra Miller's movement. And very much here, they kind of pulled it off here. They tried to change up the angle and stuff. But it looked so CG and so fake. And even the rocks and everything looked fake. And the reason is attention to detail. In physics, when you're driving on the ground, dust churns up from the ground. It doesn't matter if you're on a pitch road, you're on a concrete road, you're on a dirt road, dust actually, it starts to swirl. Okay? There's turbulence. And what's lacking in, you'll see it, I'll show you the GIF. What's lacking when he drops down on the car is turbulence. The car jumps over certain things and stuff fly out of the way. But at the end of the day, it lacks that detail. So there's something called turbulence. The other thing that made it also feel very unreal is the monotonic color that they decided to pursue. You have to understand, in darkness, things are more monochromatic. Why? Because the darkness causes your rods in your eyes to look at things. And now you imagine different colors. Your mind interprets it different. When you have red light, I dare anyone, go take a red light and shine it in a room, all right? The things in the room don't automatically become monochromatic. That is a lie, okay? And so this is why people feel the uncanny valley, because the sky is red and people say it's fake because the buildings and so on are still supposed to absorb a certain spectrum of light and reflect it, which means, therefore, that even though the world is red, you remember Krypton, when we watched Krypton in the movie, Krypton in the television series, the people still had color, right? They had colors, different colors and stuff that they were, but there's a red sun, right? So the point is the same way, you're supposed to actually retain color for certain things, even though it's red sunlight. You get it? Or red whatever, red skies. It's still supposed to retain the color. And what Zack Snyder did in the sneak peek, when we first saw Steppenwolf and the sky was red and the parademons were going up in the sky, you notice that Steppenwolf kept his color. And the silo kept its color. Why? Because it's red light, yes. But it doesn't mean that that red light is going to make everything red, because you're still using your cones to see color. Okay, so I give you the scientific explanation for why this looks incredulous. It's something that's unbelievable. You have to suspend your belief to believe it. And the other point that makes it really stupid is the fact that the light that's shining here does not look red. Okay, so it's like if they took a red filter and just filtered everything red and pink. And red and pink is the color that they use throughout there that is stupid. And the purple stuff just annoys the crap out of me. It was purple before, but it was much more grounded into color because it was much more darker with a silver background. So there was the reds, there was the purples, and it wasn't like a Christmas tree in terms of color. Look at this. Everything's lit up like little, like I said, little fireflies inside of us stuff. It's annoying as hell. Okay. And so the balance, they didn't catch the balance. They didn't do a lot of things they did wrong. So you have a muddy looking, instead of it looking red, everything kind of looks muddy. The road looks muddy. It looks brown, right? Here, the road is kind of dark and it's tinged blue. So what happened in the end is it took away from the edge. It took away from the suspense. It took away from the drama, and it took away from the superhero effects. And it's almost, in some ways, I feel like if Joss Whedon didn't know what to do, and he just decided, okay, this is how we're going to go about doing it. Because Warner Brothers had this, it seems as though they had an executive command. No, you got to take it, scare the little children, and we'll scare the little children. They need to, we need to make it kid friendly. And so they screwed up everything that was to try and fit it together. Now, the thing about it is, they had success with the first Great War, where they actually changed the color palette and it really looked great. So I am assuming that they thought because of that, they could do that for here. They could change that up as well. And it just didn't work for the third act. It just didn't work. Didn't work at all. Not even in the least. And the reason why it didn't work was because they introduced elements such as purples. In the Great War, there was no purple. Secondly, they had to put in more details and attention to details which were otherworldly. And because they chose to use for the the alien-like looking blob-like things, they chose to have it mud color. It flopped. It had to be metallic. And if you look at all of the concept art, if you look at all of the trailers, if you look at all of the previews of the movie, if you look at the background into the art of effects, you would notice that the Kryptonian stuff had to look metallic. Now, if they had the red sky and they kept this metallic looking color, and they kept the car the color and Aquaman the color, they might have succeeded at something. But no, they decided to do everything monochromatic, and that definitely, brown of all colors you're going to use, it just sucked all the life out of the action, okay, and made it unrealistic at the same time as well. So that's the reason why some people were so angry coming down to the end of it. So it's like a Marvel film, and it's blah, blah. It's because the attention to detail disappeared, and on top of that, they gave it an unrealistic hue, an unrealistic color. And it's you're going through a movie that's telling you realism. This looks real. Look how this is integrated. Look at this. This looks real. Yes, this guy, he leaps very high. But other than that, in this frame, everything else holds to the order of normalcy. Everything else here is normal. So that when the abnormal happens, it's spectacular. When he leaps into the air very high and the parademons hit him and moves away, it looks spectacular. And the parademons look like birds, right? From afar. So that's the idea. But you could tell that what the alternative to that idea was not well thought out at all. Somebody rushed that. And not only did they rush it, but they did not pay attention to detail, and they gave us something that was just dramatically inferior to what was there before. And that is what the Snyder Cut people got angry about. But you can't, you see, what I try to explain to the Snyder Cut people, and I saw all of this before, I was telling them, you're getting caught up in imagery. You're getting caught up in the visual images. And that only happened for the third act mostly. The rest of the movie, if you look at the rest of the movie, visually speaking, it's really beautiful. And generally speaking, for the most part, it holds fast to a certain degree of realism. The characters integrate into their surroundings. I'll show you what I'm talking about. It'll be clear to you in the end. But first, let's look at this little clip of it, okay? First, let me just see what's going on in the chat section. See what you guys are doing in the chat section, okay? Dave Ethan, hey, morning. Talking constructive truth as always. Yes, I want to be able to critique this film and identify what exactly is going on there. I don't believe in just emotionally bashing films or speaking ill of films. I don't believe in that. I'm a scientifically minded person. I believe in constructively showing Warner Brothers where they went wrong, and why some people had an outrage, which I saw myself, but I was able to edit it because I thought, I'm listening to the story's great and so on. Okay, well, it looks like it's not going to be the great shebang, but I'm still going with them, you know. And I saw all the flaws and problems visually and otherwise. And the soundtrack, I can also break down why certain elements of the soundtrack annoyed people and why certain elements of the soundtrack were brilliant. So my point being, you have to be able to see and understand what it is that you're looking at. So I'm breaking it down so everybody can understand, okay? Because people can't articulate this stuff. They don't know what they say. It's a horrible movie. Blah, blah, blah. It's not a horrible movie, first of all. Even, I will say that in a way, Joss Whedon superseded himself because he never had to do a movie like this. He never had to deal with such intricate detail and follow in the footsteps of a guy that's very, very detailed, especially visually about what he's doing. So you got to give Whedon some credit because he pushed himself further than he normally would have pushed himself. The standard for these films is ridiculous. Zach set a ridiculously high visual standards for these films, okay? Because this is what is called hyper-realism. This is not animation. You look at Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man looks like an animated ant climbing up a building or something, right? It's harsh. It's almost very crude. And then the buildings and the set design is not detailed like Zack Snyder does his details. All right? Because Zack is going for our world. Okay? The MC is not going for our world. It's going for a fantasy world based on our world. Let me say that again. It's going for a fantasy world based on our world. So when you watch Spider-Man, you're not feeling any direct connection to your reality. It's that world. You talk about that world. In that world where Tony Stark's is. That's what you say. Because that's the general way of storytelling. That people take you to a world that they have built. A fantasy world that they're built. Maybe it's based off of our world, but you're going to a world. See, you're leaving this world and you're going to the world in the cinema, in the movie. That is not what Zack Snyder did. Zack Snyder did the opposite of that. He brought the characters to our world, the mythical cities to our world. You see, the mythical technology to our world. And he says, how do you think about that? So that's different. It's a different approach, which means Zack has to deal with realism. He has to deal with realism. So when I hear people in vitriol and anger saying, oh, you know, Batman v Superman's a stylized version, like Zack Snyder's stylized film, and it's not realistic, and oh, look at this, and look at that. And I listen to them pettily try to break down what physics is, and they don't even understand what physics is. I heard one guy say, you know, Superman flying, it doesn't necessarily conform to physics, and I laughed. I laughed at him because I knew that there were people in the sciences that worked out the logistics of how Superman was supposed to fly. And me being someone from a scientific background, I appreciated that. So I laugh because these people have no idea what they're talking about. I wish they would just shut up, but they are free to say whatever they want to say and troll. But at the end of the day, I'm showing you what the physics of this movement is. I'm showing you what it is because I come from a scientific background. Okay? All right, so as you can see here, as I said before, because of that, your eyes cannot follow the stuff that you see in front of you in Justice League and believe it to be true. Instead, you get an uncanny valley sort of feeling, and you feel that everything that you're seeing is fake. And so the thing you have to do is suspend your reality at that point. You know what's happening, and you say, you know what, I'm just going to go with it, like you would with an MCU film or with some other movie where this, you know, where the CG is not quite, your mind saying something's wrong there. Let's just put it that way. Okay. So this is what it looks like. Okay. All right. Now, next, again, color grading is very important, but besides color grading, the physics of motion is important. Now, when we saw this above here in the trailer, the Justice League trailer, I can't remember. I think it was the sneak peek. I can't remember which one. It looked fantastic, and there's a reason. Now, the camera moves, and so therefore the sky sort of moves with Batman as he's leaping to jump into the silo. Obviously, he's jumping into something. Whereas here, a number of different things were happening, which made this unreal. The first thing is, if you look at the angle that Batman is jumping down at, it is just an off angle. This is the wrongest angle in the world. It looks like he's belly flopping, pretty much, the way how they angle the silo, which is not the way it should be, which tells me they added in this silo after. The next thing that's really off here is the sky. The sky has patches of gray and pink, and it's just off to the rest of the picture. And the third thing that throws this whole thing off is color grading. Because they tried to get more detail, I don't know if they re-rendered in 65 millimeter. I don't know what they did. But because they tried to get some more detail onto Batman's clothing, Batman himself looks like he is separate from the background he's jumping from. So what I'm trying to tell you is, and you'll see, and then they move the background backwards, something like what they did with the Flash, and they move Batman forwards, just exaggerating that movement. It was supposed to be like how Wonder Woman leaped in BVS towards Doomsday. It was supposed to get that effect. It did not do that at all. It made everything discombobulated. What I mean by that is you got a separation of the background from Ben Affleck. And so it looked as if Ben Affleck was jumping in front of a green screen. It literally looked like that. It was horrible. And it's the same thing with the Flash. It looked like Ezra Miller. He was wagging left to right and looking really weird because the background was moving rapidly backwards and he was moving forwards, exaggerating the separation of himself from the background. So it just did not look like he was running anywhere. It looked like if he was running on a treadmill and there's this background screen that's moving. So I'll show you what I'm talking about right now. And when I saw this, I remember it was for an AT&T promotion of Batman. When I saw this, I said, what the heck is this? Is this going to actually be in the movie? And then I started to really question. That's when I got kind of nervous because I was like, what the hell are they doing? They changed this. They got the purple blobs and now they have this. So I got nervous, okay? Those people who didn't have the benefit of the doubt of seeing those things, when they went into the movie, it must have been a sort of culture shock for them. Like, what the hell? They sold us this movie and this. What the hell is this? Okay, so I can understand how somebody could be thrown by, you know. Now, when you see this here that Zack Snyder did, which has less detail, however, it has been mixed in so that it looks like this guy is leaping in the sky coming down. And because the sky is a certain type of color grading that blends in with the main character, he literally feels like he's a part of the environment. Also, the angle at which it's done makes you feel like he's leaping high up into the sky, and coming down, poof. And these are things that Zack Snyder is just fantastic at doing. Epicness, which was just dulled to crap in Justice League. Okay, the epicness was, you know, the third act especially, they sucked the life out of the epicness. Okay, from several reasons, and again, it has to do with believability. Hyperrealism is creating an illusion that something is happening that looks real, but with this here, this just totally destroys it, and I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. So here we go. I have to show you that, to be brutally honest about these points doesn't mean I don't love the movie any less. I love the movie because I saw these things from day one. Okay, I saw these things from day one, but I'm just talking to you guys about them. Now, there's a lot of great stuff inside the movie, some epic scenes as well, which Zach actually did. There's some epic moments in the movie. The Great War is one of them. We had Steppenwolf facing the League. I know it was longer. I know there was a lot more stuff involved there. I know that Whedon kind of cut up some of the scenes and he spliced in some stuff. I saw where it happened. Okay, but at the end of the day, that clash with Steppenwolf, that first time in the tunnel, it was epic. Okay, it was epic, and again, lots of detail in there. So I'll talk about it. All right, so here we go. So you'll see the leaping. There you go. All right. You'll see it 4 times. All right, let me back him up again. All right, I want you to look at the background, how it's moving, and the foreground, how it's moving below first. So you see what I'm talking about? He's not leaping down a hole. It looks like he's leaping at a weird angle. Now look at the top now, and look at how the background is moving with the foreground. See? It's moving with it, first of all. And he's moving across the sky, right? It looks beautiful. It's moving at the angle he's supposed to be moving at. Let's see it again. Physics matters, folks. See that? Look at the top one. Beautiful, isn't it? Makes you feel like you're leaping into the air and weightless. All right, let's look at the bottom one again and look at the off angle and why that it doesn't work. See? Does not work. Terrible. It's a different angle to what he's supposed to be. So these are the kinds of things. Now, this one is perfect for showing you physics. Okay, I'll have to actually show you the moving video so you'll understand what I'm talking about. By the way, you can leave your comments in the chat section at the side. This is a perfect example of it. In fact, the still is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Above here, this is Steppenwolf in the tunnel. Zack Snyder directed this scene. When Steppenwolf lands in the tunnel, there is a lot of turbulence that happens. So the ground moves, some of the rocks move in the back, and the air swirls. There's a swirling sensation because of how he landed. All right. And because there's so much detail on the ground, it's a kind of dirt kind of ground inside the tunnel with a lot of debris. You can see the debris move around. And so it gives you a very realistic feel. In addition to that, there is the effect of the light wavering, as if there's heat all around, because there's flames all around. There's heat all around, which kind of waves the light. And because the light is waving, again, more physics involved here, because the light is hot, the air around it is moving in a certain pattern, and the light is distorting. So you get a wavy feel. Because of that, you get a very realistic rendition of Steppenwolf when he lands. Now, let me see the third act with Steppenwolf landing. There are a number of reasons why that thing looks fake as hell, and it looks like if it's a toy landing. The first one is when you see him landing, you'll see an outline of his body against the background. And that outline separates him from the background and makes it already the scene fake. The second reason is that when he lands on the ground, instead of there being a smashing of the ground and then some dust that comes up and turbulence, you get stones jumping up into the air, which is absolutely a no-no, because when you smash into ground, or if you take for instance, if you take an axe and you smack the ground, you're not going to get a whole set of stones coming up. They're going to crack the ground. It's just physics here. It's going to crack the ground, okay? And some of the rocks might pop up a little bit, but you get dust coming up, not rocks coming up. Dust is what comes up into the atmosphere, and it swirls, and there's turbulence. Now, you will not see that in this below scene. I'm going to actually show you the clips of them so you can have a look and assess it for yourself. We'll do the top one first, and then we'll do the bottom one after. So look at the top one and the turbulence and everything. See the turbulence? And see how everything kind of aftershocks? Okay, let's see that again. See the aftershock? Beautiful, isn't it? Now that's the way it's supposed to actually look. Let's look at the bottom half. Oh, okay, just now, hold on a second. I have to go to the still first. Look at just rocks kind of jump up off the ground. It's really ridiculous. Almost reminds me of a comic, like an animation or something. That is unrealistic. Then you also notice the outline. Hold on a second. See the outline of his body as well, showing that he's not even belonging in the picture. He doesn't even belong to the background. They separated him from the background. And it's not lighting that does that. Lighting doesn't do that. Doesn't put a shadow on your outline. So it's like all these crappy things, man. So the realism is not there. Okay. All right. So we just went through why Justice League, certain parts of it were just unrealistic. There's another place, there's a number of other places I would like to talk about in the third act where the characters actually look like puppets on a string. They literally fall like puppets on a string. Again, I can tell not only because of the color grading that exposes it, but also the lack of detail on the ground. The ground doesn't have the detail it usually has. See, here you can see almost every speck and kind of every dot and every kind of sort of the ground just has dots on it. But here you can't really see that graininess of the ground. And that again brings realism. The detail is lacking. And it's the detail that makes something real or not. Whether your eyes, whether you consciously pick it up or not, that's what determines when something is real or not. And it's this level of detail. And then the physics, the level of physics that's involved also will tell us. And what I got instead was we got something that was just not as detailed. And also, look at this again. Look at Steppenwolf landing. Watch this again. All right. Watch it again. Look at above and then look at below. I want you to see it. Look how much detail involved in above. All the grains of the ground, dust particles of the ground resettling, the heavier dust particles resettling, and the higher dust particles popping up in the air. And you have the afterblast almost. It's really impressive. Now let's look at the bottom one and the lack of detail. And this is what Marvel is poor at doing. They don't know how to get detail in there. And the physics. This is just so wrong on so many different levels. All right, so that is the reason why the realism. I could give you much more examples. Now, where I thought the realism really started to go south was in Heroes Park, when Superman was dealing with the League. I just cite one perfect example of that is when Wonder Woman lassos Superman and he pulls her and she pulls at him and she slides forward. That thing looks so unrealistic. The shadow casting was not real. The way how her feet should have buckled as she was going, because this, even though the ground is slippery, you have a certain level of friction with the surface, and so she should have slid but still be bucking. And if you look at the behind the scenes footage, she actually does buck as she's pulling in. Unless the ground is polished and smooth as silk, you don't just slide on the ground surface. You just don't do that. So it's those kinds of things that you told me. And then they sharpened up the images for the Heroes Park scene. But again, the detail of the images looked very, again, animated, not realistic. And I think, again, Zach probably departed before he could really add that touch in there. The color scheme, the color grading was fantastic. But the problem with it was more the unrefined movement of the characters. Even when the characters were being pulled in and Superman was pulling in the characters, they moved in a little too fast. When Superman took Lois Lane to fly up in the sky with him, he just kind of just popped off the ground and just went up. That never happened before with Superman. When you look at how he slapped Batman, it just looked rushed. When he was running up towards Wonder Woman and stopped her hands from clashing at the bracelets, again, it looked fake. And that, if you go and watch Man of Steel with the super speed that Superman has fighting General Zod, it doesn't look fake at all. It looks next level. And it didn't look as spectacular either. And all these things I'm saying to say that the details, Zack Snyder's there for the details. He really can direct you into how best for these characters to look. And I think Whedon had something to do with Superman backslapping Batman, I do believe. And even how he moved through the sky, really weird and very robot-like before he slapped Batman. Told me Whedon did that part. So my point being this. Warner Brothers needs to understand. They need to understand with no uncertain terms. When you try to reshoot something to get your way, you're probably going to do substandard to the director. You better let the director do it that you hired. Zack Snyder is known for action. The dude does action like nobody else can do it. So if you're going to put in another director, all right, he may show that director up. Because Zack Snyder is known for his angles, his breathtaking scenes. Visually, he's a master. So you take a master and you say, "Oh, you know what, master, you can take a seat now." And you bring in another guy who is not on his level. It's going to show in the movie. It's just going to show. Whedon's okay. I mean, I've seen Avenger movies and stuff. It's okay. It ain't Zack Snyder. It ain't Zack Snyder. Nothing in the MCU is like on Zack Snyder's level. Nothing. And it showed. And Whedon superseded himself because he realized the challenges of getting these camera angles, of getting, and he tried to put on his little signature, allowing the render to be a different way and all of this kinds of stuff. And it pales in comparison to what Zack could do. Just pales. That he had to direct the film. He definitely couldn't work with Junkie XL. He didn't have that skill to pull off what Zack was doing. He had to do it his way because he didn't have the ability to do it Zack's way. Didn't have it. But he tried. Okay? That's why I said you can't bash Justice League because you're talking about a guy working at his absolute limit, which is Joss Whedon. People are saying, well, you just had to stay faithful to Zack Snyder. Yeah, or maybe not reshoot anything and just keep what Zack Snyder had and get paid for it, right? No, Warner Brothers still wanted it lighter. What are they supposed to do? He had to do something. He had to do it his way. At least Justice League came out, folks. And it wasn't a tremendous bomb. You know what I mean? It did flop, but it wasn't a bomb. Bomb means it didn't even make your money. You didn't even make a profit. That's better than, and then all of these people who lacked understanding about this. And so they started to bitch and moan and tear the movie down. I mean, you lacked understanding. This is Zack Snyder. To follow in the footsteps of Zack Snyder is so freaking difficult. But everybody here feels, oh, it's Zack Snyder. He just had to do a few things. And a few things. You kidding me? This is freaking Zack Snyder, folks. It's intimidating. Dude does hyper-realism. You know how hard it is to do freaking hyper-realism with CG? Do you understand? People do it, they merge things in movies, but they construct worlds and make them like ours? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Do you know how good this guy is? Do you know how good Zack Snyder is visually? Do you guys even fathom it? And these are the funny things I have to deal with. I have to deal with stupid people who feel they know about cinema. I'm not saying I know about cinema, but I understand how difficult it is. This is not something you can just pick anybody off the street and, okay, he has to complete. All right, so you just finish off what Zack Snyder's doing. That's easier said than done. And Zack has no part in the process. He's not saying anything, not giving any advice at all. You're in deep shit. Deep shit. Whedon walked into that. Should have left it alone. And said, you know what, Zack, I cannot do that. Because that's an exercise in futility. You cannot follow in Zack's footsteps. Zack alone can follow in Zack's footsteps. If Whedon was making a movie that he had started, it would have been easy. You're talking about Zack finished the majority of the movie, and you have to somehow walk in that footsteps, and you have to shorten it up, You got to lighten it up somehow, right? The only way he knows how to do it is how Whedon does it. So he did it Whedon's way. How else would he do it? Can't do it Zach's way. And this is the thing that people just don't get. They're like, well, what if Whedon knew he couldn't do it? Why did he pick the job? Because Zach asked him to. What do you want him to do? And he didn't want to do it. According Zach talked him into doing it. Suicide, but he did it. So you got to give Whedon his props for that. Because he went way over his pay grade with that one. That was very difficult. Okay? And he stuck to his guns. He worked as hard as he could. They tried to render Henry Cavill's face with the mustache thing when you remember, Paramount didn't want to give up Henry Cavill. They didn't want to give up his shave his mustache. So what are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to do? So they tried to finish the thing so you could see it. And then I hear some stupid fan on YouTube and all these other places say, "Oh, I could do a better job than them." And then you see these stupid fans try to do something. I see them. They tried to render the Justice League film. They wash out all the color from the film, and it looks like shit. Justice League looks like shit. Because Zack Snyder, when he's filming, you have the green colors. You have the blue colors. Go watch the freaking trailer. This is not ugly because it has green color tones, blue color tones. Because when Zack's color grading, it's not like how you color grade. You cannot emulate what Zack is doing. So why are you trying? Watch. Look at that. That's so freaking epic. But you see the color in Wonder Woman's clothing. Hold on. Carry me back a bit. Carry me back. All right. See that blue? See the blue? See the red? As much as it is color paletted to a certain color, because he changes, not color palette, color graded. Different parts of Zack's movies have different color gradings. He color grades them differently as the movie goes along. Zack goes through different hues and different spectrums of colors. That's what makes his movies beautiful. They're not monotone. And so you feel it needs to be dark and wash out all the color from it. Zack wasn't going for that. He was going for his most colorful film ever, Justice League. And what they succeeded at doing in Justice League was tweaking those colors. Undersea Aquaman looked beautiful. The greens, blues. They even had some pinks up in there. It was beautiful. Most beautiful DCEU film yet. Very colorful. You know. But my point is, at the end of the day, they failed at the third act color grading. That's where they failed. They failed at the part which was supposed to be the peak performance. They failed. And if they had the right color grading, shit, it'll look spectacular. Even though some of the dialogue by Steppenwolf was rather lame as well. I will go into that some other time. But the point is that the look of the film, Zack Snyder takes a lot. Zack is very particular about how things look. There's a lot of detail he puts in there because he's got all kinds of things going on. Easter eggs, physics, etc., etc., etc. Meaning. Everything, every look has a meaning, and so on. So that's what's the deal with Justice League. Okay, folks, let's see what you guys have to say in the chat section. What you guys are saying in the chat section. Marcel Music says, "Sup, Anson? What's up, Marcel? I hope everything's going well with you, bro." Yeah, so when you're talking about these movies, ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand that realism, and this is a series on realism, and this is why I'm doing this thing. Realism must, hyper-realism especially, must give you the illusion of reality. You must actually feel these things can happen and they're real and they're happening now in our world as well. And so that's why, for me, you know, it's important for people to understand and identify where things went sort of south in Justice League. But before that, mostly the scenes that we saw before in Justice League, even some of the scenes that we actually handled, were quite nice, were quite realistic. The pinnacle, the third act, was not that great. The other thing I would say about Justice League, to be fair to Warner Brothers and to Joss Whedon, is that this all happened just a couple months before Justice League was to come out. So the incident where Zack Snyder's daughter died threw everything kind of out of whack. And Warner Brothers was, as you remember, they proposed to Zack Snyder, look, man, you could put this thing off till later. Zack knew what happened with BVS, so he did not want that to happen. Besides that, Infinity War was this year. No, that was not. Sorry, my bad. So instead, Zack said, go through with it. And they went through with it. And they did what they thought they would do to the direction for which they wanted to go. And, you know, they probably felt there was going to be a big backlash because of BVS and it's another Zack Snyder film, so people would hate it or whatever. But Warner Brothers needs to, they take enough risk. They should have taken another risk and said, you know what, Zack's film, you know what, maybe we should have waited on Zack. Maybe we should just let Zack do it next year. But Zack, you need to have your hands on this. This is your baby. Zack sent out Joss Whedon to do the project. And boy, oh boy, oh boy. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. We got backlash and all kinds of crazy things that happen. At the end of the day, the movie is out and has done its thing in theaters. It's done its thing in home box office. We're left with this situation. The situation is this. I believe that the film, as I saw from different pieces of it, there's a lot of the film that was done, and maybe Zack would want to do reshoots, maybe he won't. But at the end of the day, I truly believe that we should get that cut that Zack Snyder did. Time frame is not important. Just give us the cut that you know, he is done. If he can finish off some of the cut, if he needs money to finish off the cut, whatever it is, we want to back him 100% to make sure that this cut comes out. And we need it by next year, the latest. You know, and that is why I always tell you guys to put hashtag release the Snyder cut. And I'm in this until it is released. That's how I feel about it. And I think you guys should do the same. Keep on pushing for this cut. No matter what. If Aquaman comes around the corner, great. Still, hashtag release the Snyder cut. After Shazam, if they haven't released the Snyder cut before Wonder Woman, I'm going to have a problem. I'm going to have a problem with Warner Brothers. I'm going to tell you that right now. Because we're offering to help Zack Snyder finance the cut. We're not going to forget this. And depending on how Warner Brothers, I give them 2 films to sort themselves out. 2 films to sort themselves out. Get that movie out there. 2. I'm going to give you Aquaman and I'm going to give you Shazam. But if by the time Wonder Woman turns around, I don't see a Snyder cut out there, we're going to have some problems, Warner Brothers. You and us in-house, we're going to have some problems. We're going to have some bad problems. Right? Patty Jenkins is an awesome lady and everything, and Wonder Woman is an awesome movie. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be excited for Wonder Woman 2. But at the end of the day, if you don't put out that Snyder cut, and I mean, I've given you a lot of chance, because some people would be saying, like, if Aquaman is crap, we're done with you, Warner Brothers. You screwed us over, Warner Brothers. Let's be real. People don't like to hear me say this, but you screwed us over. You advertised one thing and you gave us another thing. This is twice. 2 strikes. Suicide Squad and Justice League. You advertised one thing and then you gave us a totally different movie. Right up to the day, the Heroes trailer, where you had us with Clark, you know, talking about the ring, and we were like all wondering, what's this ring thing? Is he going to marry her? Blah, blah, blah. And then nothing. Zilch in the movie. Which is why people were bitter, and they were vehement against you, and they were angry, and they're talking about Joss Whedon putting in some stupid lines or whatever. But my point is, you advertised one thing, you gave us something else. All right? So you screwed us over double time. We're asking simply for the Snyder cut. and that you don't screw us over with the other movies. Whatever's advertised should be what we see. Right? Because you hype up movies really great, and it looks like you tamper with the movies before they come out. And it's not the directors doing this. It's you. You tamper with them. You tamper with David Ayer's Suicide Squad. David Ayer came out and said, he said it with his own mouth. Yeah, there was a scene where the Suicide Squad was supposed to chase off the Joker, and that was the scene that you saw in the trailer. BVS, Zack Snyder says at the last moment you asked him to shorten up the movie. Patty Jenkins talks about Wonder Woman. She says, "Oh, it's not WB, but I feel it's WB." And said, we don't see the relevance in this, you know, is he going to shoot these people? Is he attacking? What? So why is she crossing no man's land, right? She said it was a creative team. I don't believe that. You know, Zach here now with Justice League. You change up a lot of stuff at the last moment. Is this what we're going to be looking for? Misleading trailers and stuff being changed up at the last moment? You're going to do that to Aquaman as well? This is the thing, Warner Brothers, you have to understand. We don't trust you like that. That's the problem. People can't trust you. We don't know. We have good trailers, fantastic trailers, and then you go and see the movie, and you left out a lot of stuff that you had in the trailers. And you leave us hanging, like you're saying, screw you, fans. And you're giving us the middle finger. You came in the DVD and showed us a very important piece of Justice League, which was Superman and the Kryptonian ship and coming out of it. Very symbolic, very important. You left that out of the damn movie. It got me angry. So I'm saying this to say this, Warner Brothers. If you want to rebuild trust, the first way you can start doing that is by giving the fans the movie they should have gotten, which is the Snyder Cut. Okay? I think they do that to get us to watch the next film. We ain't gonna watch the next film if you keep on showing us stuff which we don't get in the movie. And don't tell me you're leaving it for an extended cut or some other thing, because that's crap. Okay? So my point is this. Warner Brothers needs to get their act together and show the Snyder Cut. Now we are going to pay for it and even help finance it because it's Zack Snyder's film that he should have gotten out. All right. And if Zack Snyder makes no more DCEU films, then great. No problem. But give us that completed stuff. We need the completed stuff. And I'm not seeing the completed stuff. What Warner Brothers is doing, it seems to be hedging and hugging. And I don't know if they want to put out this Snyder Cut. Okay. And I'm not saying you have to put it out. We will finance it. But what you need to do is at least let us know that you're letting Zack Snyder finish his cut himself. We know that our cut is finished, and that's also his cut. But we want his cut the way how he would completely want it done. So that's what I have to say about that, and that's why I'm in the Snyder Cut campaign. I'm with the other people. Some of them are misguided in their opinions about the Zack Snyder Cut. But I'm still there because I want to see the cut happen. They want to put down Joss Whedon, or they call it the Justice League. They were putting down Joss Whedon just to try and build up Zack Snyder. It just makes no sense to me. Don't do those things, folks. Don't put down. Now, what I just broke down was to show you what and why you felt a certain way about the movie. But it doesn't mean to say that I am the be-all, end-all of these things, or that also that it means Justice League was a terrible movie. That's not what it means at all. All right, folks. Well, I got to go. It was nice talking to you all. Have a great day. I'm out of here.